Well, yeah, that, and in this process of assessing, once the lineup is set and the debates begin, in the meantime, Sean, we need to look at every one of these potential candidates and declared candidates' records, see if they've had opportunity to veto overspending in their city or their state or in some governing body, see if they've seized the opportunity to save other people's money and not squander it, see if they've had opportunity to go to the mat in protecting Second Amendment rights and every constitutional right. See if they have, in their own personal lives, lived a fiscally and socially conservative life and really walk the walk, not just talk the talk. If that's really important to you as the one doing the assessing of these candidates, we have to do our homework. Don't let the media define who these candidates are. Let us, as constituents, as voters, as potential candidates, we need to do our homework.
No, I think you've very well said. And one of the things I want to do in this program is give these candidates a forum where they can answer, they can explain their record, we can examine it, and also not really play gotcha because, although if I had, but ask the tough questions as well when necessary. Let me ask you this question. You were very critical of Nancy Pelosi's district and the Speaker. Here she wants this big Obamacare bill. She gets the bill. 20% of the waivers in April come from her district. Harry Reid, a lot of waivers in Nevada. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. If it's so bad and your constituents want out, why am I stuck in being beholden to this bill and everybody else? Your reaction?
Yeah, this is a bit of that crony corporatism, maybe on a smaller scale than what some of us are concerned about with the bigger picture in America. But this is an example of that. It's a corrupt system. This whole Obamacare fiasco that we're seeing with the waivers coming down. And our bureaucrats and our politicians in D.C. can't even give us a consistent explanation as to why some companies are given waivers and some are not. And in the words of Dennis Miller today, who said on Fox in reference to something that Nancy Pelosi said, what she is saying is a tight-faced lie. We cannot believe what it is that she tells us now in terms of explaining why these waivers were given in her district. I think it's favoritism. I think it's unfair. And I think the little guy ultimately gets hurt with a system like this in the waivers of Obamacare. You'll hear Michelle Malkin give some awesome explanation as to what it is coming down the pike with Obamacare waivers.
Well, you just gave us a great promo for later in the program. Governor, you're a pro, and I appreciate the plug. Governor, it's always good to see you, and we're going to continue to monitor your process, and we do appreciate your insight. As always, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, as always.
All right, and coming up, Democrats are still pushing to raise the debt ceiling, but do they deserve more of your hard-earned tax dollars? We have a special analysis you don't want to miss, and Michelle Malkin, she is here to react to the shocking number of Obamacare waivers in Princess Pelosi's district. That and much more coming up straight ahead. And on Monday, Congress blew through the debt ceiling, and despite the Democrats' dire warnings, catastrophe did not strike. While the Anointed One and his fellow Democrats are still pushing to raise the debt ceiling, their so-called investments over the past 2 years gave a frightening indication of what they'll do with all that money. Now, let's start with the stimulus. According to the Washington Post, the CBO estimates that the stimulus added, on average, about 1 percentage point annually to economic growth and reduced the unemployment rate by half a point between the years 2009 and 2011. Now, using the CBO's numbers, CNS News calculated that the federal government could have simply written a check for a whopping $586,428 to every person whose job was created or so-called saved by the stimulus. And that's not all. Remember AIG. Now, the administration claimed that taxpayers would reap big rewards from the government's investment in that failed enterprise. But shockingly, AIG stock prices, well, they plummeted. They have lost over a third of their value since January. So it looks like government may not turn a profit after all. Joining me now with reaction, Fox Business Network, Sandra Smith, and from the Fox News Channel, nationally syndicated radio talk show host, Monica Crowley. Boy, those are great investments. That's so $586,000. We would have been out of this whole mess, and we would have been just as well off.
It's called winning the future, Sean.
Is that what that's called?
It's also called disastrous economic policies, right? from day one in this administration.
And that's the bottom line. Raise the debt ceiling. Give us an idea of how you are going to correct the current situation. What is the plan? You throw out AIG, those are numbers that the taxpayer knows all too well now. It was January. They were being promised $20 billion in profits. Sean, that's when AIG stock that you just showed was at $60. It's at 30 today. We don't even know if we're going to break even on that investment.
Yeah. Roughly half of the American people think we're either in a recession or a depression right now. Anemic growth, 1.8%. That's anemic. Housing prices have fallen 57 consecutive months. Inflation is up, and gas prices, we have 7 in 10 Americans saying it is causing financial hardship for their families. Here's what I contend. In spite of what all liberals say, Republicans can't win, a weak field, AAA, whatever they're saying, if this holds, it becomes mathematically impossible for this president to be reelected, right or wrong?
If this economic situation stays the way it is, or, God forbid, even gets worse, this president is toast. We've seen that throughout history, that on elections that hang on the economy, and most presidential elections do, in a situation like this with politically toxic elements like staggeringly and stubbornly high unemployment, plus this huge debt overhang that is oppressing any kind of economic growth. You have Obamacare. You have record-breaking deficits. You've got unprecedented spending. That's what the 2012 election is all going to be about. It's going to hinge on this question of the proper size and scope of government. And this president and his party have expanded government to such a massive and unprecedented degree that it is stifling economic growth across the board.
A+, extraordinarily well said. I agree. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, everyone at home just wants leadership from their president. You know, Jay Carney, the press secretary, the White House press secretary, saying that there's going to be an economic Armageddon if we don't extend the debt ceiling. Sean, I beg anyone out there to prove that we will see Armageddon. We're past, we've hit that point, right? And looking back over the past 10 years, 3 times that we've raised the debt ceiling, there was a 3-month period where we had to wait for the debt ceiling to be raised. Yeah. There was no Armageddon in those 3 months. Where is the proof we're going to default on the debt?
It's all hype. It's power panic politics. All right, let me ask you this. Is there anybody you're looking at for president right now that you find intriguing, that you are leaning towards voting?
You know what? I have to agree with you, Sean. I've been listening to you over the last couple of months, and you're saying don't buy into the conventional wisdom. This Republican field, as it stands right now, is a lot stronger than what the mainstream media and the left wants you to believe. I know you're going to have Senator Santorum on the program tonight. He's extraordinary. Mitt Romney, look, they all have issues, and they all have some cleanup work to do.
Weaknesses.
Yes, and they all have cleanup work to do with conservatives. But here's the point. There's nobody with bigger baggage in this race than President Obama.
Great point.
The massive expansion of the welfare state, socialized medicine, record-breaking deficits, unprecedented spending. That is going to be the issue for 2012, and the Republicans had better stick to it. I don't care who they put up necessarily. If that's the issue, they win.
I need to hear more.
You need to hear more. I'm with you. I want to hear more. I want to see them. How do they all withstand a lot of controversy? And I think they're all going to have their struggles, bumps in the road. How do they do in debates? There's going to be a story that emerges. Why do I have to decide now? There's no primary now.
We were promised change in the last election, and Main Street's there's a fear factor there now. They're going to have to, and they probably will be a lot better at getting past the rhetoric. They're going to be listening. Everyone has an idea. They either want lower gas prices, they want a job, they want the housing values to come back up. Everyone is going to vote with their wallets at the end of the day, and that's
you get an A+ too. All right, let me ask you one offbeat question. Arnold Schwarzenegger, how does he hide this for 10 years? Sandra.
It's hard to comment on this. It's obviously a very sensitive situation for his family. You know, we don't know all the details of this. Maybe Maria, because of the fact that he was in public office, maybe there was things she did know. We could speculate all day long. There's going to be more details that come out of this.
I cannot understand. It always staggers me when you have people, especially men, but not exclusively.
Go ahead. Attack my gender.
But when they reach sort of the pinnacle of fame or power or whatever they've sought in their professional life, they tend to self-destruct. When this was happening, Arnold Schwarzenegger was an international movie star, thinking about running for governor of the biggest state in the union, had people like Orrin Hatch talking about changing the Constitution so he could run for president someday. And he was doing this kind kind of behavior, high-risk behavior in his personal life. It was like Bill Clinton choosing a woman who was on the inside, and Monica Lewinsky,
McGreevey,
who was
Spitzer,
available and willing.
It's unbelievable.
And it's just, it takes advantage of the power differential in that relationship as well.
Ego, out of control. Simple. All right.
Sad.
And this goes to their head. They read their own press. Guys, good to see it. By the way, A+ for it across the board tonight.
Awesome.
Thank you.
And coming up, Nancy Pelosi's district received a shocking number of last month's Obamacare waivers, but a closer look at the actual business recipients is going to leave you outraged. We'll check in with Michelle Malkin, and we'll find out who she thinks she wants for president. That's all straight ahead. All right, the Obama administration approved over 200 new Obamacare waivers just last month, thereby granting select businesses with a one-year exemption from the federal law. Now, what makes these issuances especially interesting is that almost 20% of them were from small businesses in Nancy Pelosi's district. And unlike the majority of other waivers, like, say, labor union chapters or large corporations, according to the Daily Caller, the recipients in San Francisco are mostly luxurious gourmet restaurants, hotels, spas, and, of course, the House Minority Leader's office is denying that favoritism played any role, arguing, quote, it is a pathetic thing that these are people who would be cheering for Americans to lose their minimum health coverage or see their premiums increase for political purposes. These waivers are reviewed and granted solely by the administration in an open and transparent process. Joining me now with reaction, the author of Culture of Corruption, Michelle Malkin, is back with us. And Michelle, good to see you. Thanks for being with us.
Hey, thanks as always, Sean.
All right, now let's start with the just utter hypocrisy here. You know, I thought this was good for every American. I thought she was saying this is good for every American. And as you look at it, you know, 20% of the waivers in the month of April for her district, why should I be concerned?
Well, it's very newsworthy. I think it's indicative of a problem that has been a hallmark in the age of Obama since day one, and that is that selective enforcement has been the law or the lawlessness of the land for this administration and for the Democrats. And you're right, Sean. I think it's a very basic point, but it deserves to be reiterated. If Obamacare is so good for everyone, why is it that this escape hatch keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger for an increasing number of big labor unions, companies, many of them which were foremost at the vanguard there of crusading for Obamacare in the first place, and many of these noteworthy businesses in the ground zero district of a woman who foisted Obamacare on everybody else. Now, as you say, Nancy Pelosi denies that there's any corruption, but I think it's inherently corrupt to have this system in place that is not transparent. They can say it till they're blue in the faces that they're being transparent, but one thing that we do not have is a list of all the people who applied for these golden tickets out of Obamacare and were denied. Who else tried to get a pass and was denied? For what reason? And are there any other members of Congress out there who have intimate knowledge about the waiver process, and did they intervene on any of these businesses or unions' behalf? We don't know, and we need to.
Well, it seems particularly foolish to me, because if they think that they're going to be able to hold this information from the public, we're going to know what it is. We're going to know who applied. We're going to know in the end who was denied, and then we're going to see whose districts benefited. And I think if it can be shown that certain congressional districts or states like Harry Reid benefited, I think they got themselves a big political problem for the very reasons you're citing here, is that, you know, arrogant Learjet limousine liberals, this law is good for you, but, well, our friends get an exemption.